edit this one. I haven't had to edit anything in a while. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for, see, this is why it's nice. If I wouldn't have been doing this live, I might have just done the whole forecast without any sound. That would have been so sad. So thank you so much, everyone. Welcome. Yeah, I'll just edit out the first part later. I'm going to start over. Hi, I'm Dr. Claire Moon. Welcome to another forecast. It is January part 2. And what I was rambling about before when I didn't have my volume up or my sound working, was that this is later than I would like to be for part 2. Usually I want to get it, before like the 14th or 15th of the month. So just so you know, this is later than I would like. But that being said, I did cover the last few days over in part 1 if you want to reflect and look over there. But we'll be reflecting today too before we jump into the future. Before we jump into everything, yeah, I was saying too, there's a chat on the right-hand side of your screen. You can say hello, put in your questions. People are already saying hi. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all again. And too, if anything, if you have little anecdotes you want to share too, I do like to check in and see how people are doing throughout as much as possible. It is Casual Tuesday here at Aligning Light Astrology in my office. I'm wearing my favorite sweatshirt. It says play the 80s. Get the ladies. All right. So it is a dog that's playing a really cool boombox. So that's for today. Everything's still the same. I'm still taking readings. I'm not ever booked out that far. I think I'm only booked out a few weeks right now. So you can get in pretty quick. If it's super urgent, you can email me, AligningLightAstro@gmail.com. I have a sliding scale. So if money is an issue, or if you are just someone who is affected by marginalization or the oppressive systems that be, send me an email. I have a sliding scale, and that's how you book that. It is all on my website in the FAQ at www.AligningLightAstrology.com. Promotional time done. Let's bring the chart up for right now. And this too, I don't know, I know that I was a little time constrained this month and I just kind of put the forecast wherever. I usually like to elect these and pick nice skies to do this. These aren't, I was looking at this chart and I was like, why did I choose to do this? Why did I choose to do this right here? I don't love this. I get so frazzled when the moon is applying to a square with Mars because I'm a day baby and I don't handle Mars as well as the night babies. So that's that's probably adding to a little bit of my frazzledness today. Um, let's see. I have a bunch of reflection notes here. How did the first 2 weeks of the month go for everyone? They went okay for me. I had a bunch of stuff I did. Uh, Definitely Mercury. So I think maybe first point of reflection, and people can let me know like if this is what you're experiencing too. So Mercury was retrograde and they stationed direct around the end of December, January 1st. And actually, let me just go back to that. And, usually after Mercury stations direct, at that point in the Mercury retrograde story, whatever kind of things were, brushed up or coming into, being contemplated a lot, any kind of snafus or challenges that might have had to do with communication, exchanges, ideas, planning, any kind of Mercury stuff, travel, whatever those were, usually by the time that Mercury stations direct, they things start to resolve. We start to see some kind of resolution, at least in the distance, like, oh, you know what? This is how this is gonna get rectified or get cleaned up or whatever. This time did not feel so much like that to me. Like it just has felt like, kind of a continuation of like Mercury retrograde caffeine-free diet light with the Mercury post-retrograde period happening in Sagittarius, where Mercury really struggles to do its stuff sometimes, which is like travel, communication, etc. So yeah, it hasn't, and I feel like Chris Brennan warned us of this a bit in his forecast, just that, because of the nature of the end of this retrograde, that things wouldn't resolve as quickly as they might otherwise. And I have been noticing that. So if you've been noticing that too, yeah, that's what I feel like is going on there. Um, but not to fret because, of course, very soon we'll be out of the post retrograde period on the 20th. So, and I'm kind of fumbling around with words because I'm trying to get out of the habit of calling it the post retrograde shadow. I don't like that word shadow. It has too many, it's too loaded now. And I feel like, I hear um, other astrologers have good points. Like Gary Caton talks about this all the time, and he gets so riled up, and it's kind of funny to me to listen to him talk about it because he's written a lot about Mercury and Mercury retrogrades. And I can see some of his points around not appreciating the term shadow just because I think we do get too negative on Mercury retrograde period time. But anyway, I digress. How's everyone's post retrograde time happening? Because yeah, that's been mine. I've still just had a lot of reschedulings. That's been a really practical thing that's come up is like, I cannot tell you how many I've done a few. I rescheduled a dentist appointment because I don't have dental insurance yet. Still, whatever, maybe never, I don't know when. Um, and I've had a lot of clients reschedule. I've had friend kind of things fall through, little friend get-togethers fall through. So yeah, the post retrograde time is doing that. It's definitely doing that. Victoria is saying, yeah, it's been murky. So, oh, look it. We got people. I got so many people here. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Um, what else? We just got done with this Capricorn new moon. For me, this was in my 12th house, and it was 100% about like having some new beginnings in terms of my spiritual health, my mental health, my emotional health. Like it was the very classic 12th house things of that nature, spiritual, mental, emotional stuff. Um, I think I've talked about this before, but I suffer from seasonal affective disorder. The winter makes me sad. When the sun goes away, that's really hard on me. And I live in Wisconsin. So usually there's this kind of bell curve of symptoms that comes up at about November. Now is about the peak of it. And then by March, I'm starting to feel better again. But I'm going to maybe try out, well, I am, and I'm reluctant. So that I think that was kind of an interesting part for me about this Capricorn new moon is I really like it. Like overall, it's been, really, really, really kind of constructive. We've got this exalted Mars here. We've got the Lord of that new moon that happened on January 11th, seeing it by a sextile. Jupiter was involved as well. They could see this new moon by a trine. So it was, it seemed very constructive. And I think it is. At the same time, I mean, I'm not like excited right now to try an antidepressant. I'm not like super gung ho to like start it, but I'm going to. So that's been my and kind of coming into acceptance that like, you know what? It's just not going to happen for me. I'm not going to be going for walks every day. I'm too far into the hole because last winter I walked every day and like I revolved my whole lifestyle around my seasonal affective disorder and it worked. Like I felt good. I felt great. It was awesome. Um, Now this year, I've had a bunch of other great stuff happen, but I haven't been going on my walks and I can tell. And so here we are. And so that was my new moon. So I don't know if anyone else had a really like significant like new moon in Capricorn, but that was mine. Hopefully yours was equally as constructive and not as like womp womp feeling. But yeah, I wanted to share that because that was just such people wonder about the 12th house. A lot of times it is spiritual stuff, mental health stuff, emotional health stuff. Other thing, I went on a silent retreat from the 12th to the 14th. So that was another 12th house thing. Got my fancy little, I can show this off. I can virtue signal now, be like, ooh, show off my spiritual cred with my little twine thing. But yeah, I did that. And that was also incredibly Capricorn 12th house new moon stuff. And it did. It really was kind of this really big new beginning for me in terms of my spiritual practice and just seeing like how deep it can go. Like I've never really slowed down that much. I've never really like, and I know I'm talking about myself a lot, but it's my season. It's Capricorn season. And I put on the Regulus oil before this from Sphere and Sundry. So maybe that has something to do with it. And I'm wearing yellow. But Yeah, it was, I slowed down a lot. I didn't know I could slow down that much. I didn't know I could meditate for that long. I didn't know that I could do a lot of the things that happened this last weekend. And it was really awesome. Like I've done a lot of, ethnobotanical, like psychedelic-y kind of stuff. And, the amount of insight you get from those types of peak experiences that are just kind of put in your lap. I just want to like validate for anyone who's thinking about doing a silent retreat and is nervous like I was to do something like that, because it is a lot of surrendering, a lot of your time, a lot of your self, basically. Um, it was a lot of insight. It was just as much insight as I've gotten from some of those other peak experiences. Now, it took longer and I had to try a lot harder and I had to be super disciplined and do Saturn stuff for days. But yeah, it worked. It totally worked. They're right. So, yeah, if anyone's on the fence about that, like totally do it. That'll be your 12th house learning time if you're wondering what the 12th house is about. Uh, and also thank you. I guess one last thing before I get into some more astrology stuff and some good comments here. Thank you to everyone for all your support this last year. I know I've been doing some gratitude here in my newsletter and stuff. I want to make sure people know how much I appreciate y'all. But I was able to get health insurance this year, at least a little bit, or not health insurance, but like health care. I got some health care this year, which was a goal I had last year. So thanks everyone. You were part of that. And I got to go on this retreat, which was a big kind of 12th house year, perfection year thing that I wanted to do. And I did it. So, and that's all because of the support that I get from people who watch this, people who book sessions with me, people who just support me, even just like opening that newsletter. I get to go and look at my little bar graph that says like people opened my newsletter. And I'm like, oh my God. And even that's a contribution. Even that helps. So thank you again. All right. Let me look at these great comments. Okay, we got some other Great Lakes people here. Yeah, the lack of sunlight, it gets really rough, and the Scandinavians, I am resentful of their advice. I resent them just saying, just do the Higgly thing, just go outside and be outside. But you know what? It's unfortunately true. Um, oh, we got someone else who also has a chart like me, it sounds like. Yeah, seasonal affective disorder. Yeah, -40 up there. And it was only negative single digits here. And it makes it really, the resistance to go out into that is so strong. It's ridiculous. Um, thanks, Holly. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay. What else? What other reflections? Oh, we're done with the Mercury square Neptune business. That's also done. So we had a bunch of those. We had 3 of those. Mercury squared Neptune, and that, it's like, oh, if we already weren't struggling enough with just the whole retrograde period, maybe it had also these. It's just like double it, whatever the murkiness might have been. So we're done with that now. That's good. Mercury's in Capricorn, back in Capricorn, with the more smooth operating Mars in Capricorn here as well to support. We're going to talk today a little bit about the Sun-Pluto business. We're going to talk about a Cancer full moon. No, Leo full moon. We're gonna talk about, yeah, those are some of the bigger things. There's a Mars-Uranus trine that's gonna happen. Let's do some of the dates of interest. We've got, I'll just go through the whole month. So Mercury stationed direct on the 1st-ish. Mars entered Capricorn on the 4th of January. We had that Capricorn moon on the 11th. Mercury re-entered Capricorn on the 13th. Sun enters Aquarius on the 20th. So going forward, Pluto enters Aquarius on the 20th as well. So we're going to have the Pluto and Aquarius talk today, or at least my little view of it. The 23rd of January, Venus enters Capricorn. The 25th of January, Leo full moon. The 27th of January, Uranus stations direct. So those are some of our points that we're going to get into. And, at this point too, another little reflection, Mercury and Mars are visible now. So that's another thing that's really been changing throughout the course of the month is that as the month has progressed, Mercury and Mars have become more and more visible as the sun has moved away from them. So sun's been moving faster than Mars, of course, always is. For the most, yeah, I think, no, for the most part. For the most part also, well, usually Mercury's moving faster than the sun, but during a retrograde, they slowed down. So with that kind of separation, that changes Mercury and Mars's condition, and that also then in turn changes how they are able to operate their places. So for instance, Mars ruling over Scorpio and Aries, now you might notice with Mars being more visible, maybe some of the actions and fruits of these house topics, these areas of life are more visible. So for instance, this person, if they were a Gemini rising, maybe they'd be hanging out with friends more, maybe in their 11th house, Aries 11th house of friends and groups. Maybe now with Mars more visible, they're starting to hang out with their friends a little bit more. Mercury ruling over Gemini and Virgo, those areas of life, those house topics there within, likewise becoming more and more apparent, maybe forward progressing, visible. We know what's going on in those areas much more, versus when planets are too close to the sun, those types of things become less apparent, more hidden, maybe even less effective for a while, just temporarily. So that's been going on. What else? I think that those are kind of the big things. The 16th through the 19th, so transitioning now, let's segue into the details. The 16th through the 19th of this month feel important. Like this is when a lot of stuff is going to go down. Right now, there's a lot of cardinal energy. There's a lot of mutable energy. As the month progresses, like all of the kind of the changeability that we have right now with the mutability, the cardinality, all of that, right? As the month progresses, we're going to get more and more fixed energy. Planets are going to start moving into Aquarius. So with that, well, and we'll lose our Sagittarius Venus. So with that, I think as January progresses, things will get more and more fixed or more, well, they'll start to settle into our next holding pattern for a little while, for better or for worse. So, if things are kind of up in the air right now and we see them kind of settling into, it's not our favorite. Yeah, this is kind of, we're going into a bit of a fixed holding pattern for a while around that. If something's cooking, that's exciting, that might kind of settle into the next holding pattern. So it kind of depends on the context. And even that's an oversimplification. Let's look at the 16th. Let's look at today, right now. What do we got going on right now? I guess let me just check on the chat before I do that. Okay, we've got worry about ponies. Hold on. Time out. Diana, what's going on? I worry about our ponies and do all we can to keep them warm. Oh, yeah, because it's so cold. Yeah, got to protect the ponies. I've actually been thinking about, I've been thinking a lot. I was just telling my partner yesterday morning, I was like, I keep thinking about the animals. Like, what are they doing out there? Like, I went out and there were these little, like, they must have been little squirrel paw prints or little raccoon paw prints. And I was like, man, it's too cold out here for y'all. Like, what are you doing? I was so sad. But they do. They exist. They do it somehow. So I shouldn't worry about them. But um FG McCreds. McCredes. Hi, welcome. No, actually, Venus, I think Venus square Neptune is on the docket for today. Yeah, we're going to talk about that today. That's coming up. It is on my notes. So we'll talk about the Venus square Neptune coming up. Thank you for pointing that one out. All right. Cool. So we have the moon applying to a square with, this Sun-Pluto stuff right here. We are currently in moon squaring up with Mars. Now, when moon is square Mars, it can feel a bit urgent. We can feel a bit hasty. We can act in haste sometimes. In Aries, we can be too quick to do something. So just make sure that if there is a sense of urgency, and I use this is usually my advice for every Mars Moon square, where especially when Mars is overcoming. So when Mars is earlier in zodiacal order, that is a concept that has to do with like if I have an aspect, how do I tell which planet is going to maybe have more say in how the outcome plays out? The planet earlier in zodiacal order, if they are in a sign-based aspect, so not parentheses, not counting a conjunction or an opposition, so only really squares, sextiles, trines, basically. Um, planet in earlier order has more say. So Mars has a little bit more say here. So we might really be feeling a sense of urgency. And there is a potential to potentially make mistakes in that. Depends on who you are and the circumstances, of course. But, sometimes a sense of urgency isn't real. And it's more just that there's a discomfort or a fear that is rousing us to act when we don't actually need to. And what we need to do is just sit with the discomfort or the fear. So, that's advice I've been given for a long time that holds here as well. Now, a different play on this is, especially with like Pluto being in the mix, it's so powerful. This whole Capricorn stellium right now is just so powerful. And last month, when this square was happening, the sun wasn't here yet, but it was that energy of like doing a push of effort, you know, doing a last push of effort on something potentially. Now, this is an opening waxing moon, so maybe it's a first big push or something like that, or we're going through kind of the first hurdle in a big push of effort. But today and tomorrow feel like days where there might be a lot of efforting, a lot of pushing, a lot of work being done where we could put in a lot of solid effort and work if we need to, it's kind of that moving mountains energy a little bit. So that's what's going on that can be really helpful. Now, I said this, I think the last forecast, but just like, my pharmacist brain goes off and then, knowing that my my best friend, was a mortician for about the same length of time I was a pharmacist, like over a decade. And she would always talk about this being the busy season. So, if you're out there shoveling, especially if you've got heart conditions, if you got any conditions, just take it easy because I feel like we can push it. We like have that fire to push it and we can almost push it too far. So just be careful today and tomorrow. Take it easy. Um, let's see. What else? And Rahu, my threat assessment with Aries lately is a little higher than normal, just because for 18 months we have Rahu, the North Node in here, and they add a bit of confusion, a bit of frenziedness that doesn't necessarily help. Now, looking at the Sun, let's look at Sun applying to Pluto. And this is going to be the case, January 16th through like the 19th. Let's just call it, let's just say let's say January 16th through January 23rd, this Sun Pluto thing it's within that 3-degree range of engagement. So, P.S. for anyone new, I would do Hellenistic astrology. That's why I'm using all these lingity terms. I'd like to show my math for those of you who are new. This is why I talk like this. So 3 degrees of engagement. The ancient Hellenistic astrologers said that was kind of within planets within 3 degrees. That was within striking range, kind of. That was where we might feel these things or see their reflections the most intensely. So let's just say Sun Pluto conjunction, like the 16th, really peaks on the 19th, 20th, and then starts to wane toward the 23rd. What could be going on here? Look to the house topics, the life topics that are in your chart, in your Capricorn and Aquarius places where this is happening. For this made up person who's being born right now, a Gemini rising, perhaps, that would be your 8th and 9th house topics, whatever life topics those are for you. Now, what might be we looking for? What might be we be looking for there? Basically, okay, the classic power dynamic stuff, for better or for worse. I always say there's kind of average, normal power dynamics that we run into regularly between a teacher and student, perhaps, like there's a teacher or someone who's saying, I have more knowledge, I have special knowledge. And then, like there's trust that has to be then given to say, okay, I'll be open to learning from you. And that's even a little bit of a power dynamic that we need to be aware of it and be respectful of it and all that good stuff. But then, of course, there's also more challenging power dynamics where there are things that are out of our control, things that, especially in Capricorn, parts of these really oppressive systems that we're all a part of, or being harmed by or being harmed by. Um, that's kind of some of this Pluto and Capricorn stuff really being loud. And, if that experience of like something in the system being out of your control that really holds you um, kind of hemmed in or holds you back in some way, that can be a Pluto thing. So that, this week, if you're noticing any of those things, now maybe it's not happening, there's nothing external happening and it's all kind of internal, maybe then it's some pattern that has to do with your own self or life that you're noticing during this time. Um, Outside of that, sometimes Sun with Pluto, we can just kind of get Pluto-y, all of us. We can kind of get, a little bit more hyper fixated on things sometimes, or, we can actually use this for hyper focus if you want to. It can be a good time to get a little obsessive about something if it's something you need to get obsessive about. Um, like starting a puzzle, like doing a puzzle, that would be a really good use of this energy. But yeah, anything where you have to like be powerful, step into power, that could be a constructive thing with this. But I usually find that during Sun Pluto things, my mind just is I'm noticing the strength of mind, for better or for worse. Let's just say that. Yeah. So if you're noticing themes, especially if they're around control, power dynamics, having, either tight grip on things, might just need to every once in a while, just like loosen the shoulders, take a breath. Um, and sometimes it's pressurized situations. So if you're in a pressurized situation, if you feel like there's a lot of heavy weight on you this week, just do your best to take care of yourself. We probably have more time than we think. So I'll just throw that out there. Now, the kind of cool thing that I like that's happening around right now. What? We have a Mercury Saturn sextile. And this is pretty helpful for just kind of material world. And when I say material world, I need to specify that more too. I usually mean like just anything we're doing in our boring lives, like all of the achievement. I shouldn't say it's boring, but we're all kind of trying to achieve stuff and like pay our taxes and, put fuel in our vehicles if we need to do that. And yeah, that's kind of material world stuff. When I was dancing and I'd be like training for a competition or whatever, like material world stuff, this can be really great for that. Great for planning, thinking, communicating, trying to cognate about plans. And with Saturn and Pisces, it's just it gets more visionary, more artistic, more poetic in what we're dreaming up or putting our mind to. But then that ability to actually make those plans real, it's very possible when we have all of this in a nice sextile. So if you need to project manage yourself a little bit more than usual, I'm projecting. I've been doing that. I've been project managing myself more than usual. That's a nice, I think, element of having Mercury and Saturn here in a sextile, and just Saturn in sextile with all of these Capricorn planets. Uh, Now, the 17th, that is going to perfect. So we'll get exactly 4 degrees Capricorn, Mercury, 4 degrees Saturn, and Pisces. Still keeps being this way. It's been this way for a while. But Jupiter also has been blessing any of these configurations between these nocturnal earth and water signs. Jupiter's been really making this more constructive than it might be otherwise. So take advantage, look at the places in your chart that this is about. So, again, just kind of using myself as an example. If I'm an Aquarius rising right now, I am an Aquarius rising. This is in my 2nd house, my 4th house, and my 12th house. So I can tell you right now that what I'm doing is I've had, at least a modicum of stability in my home life, which is great. And that kind of abundance of stability that I have in my 4th house in my private life is helping me to weather some storms in my money place. It's really helping me to discipline myself too. And it's helping with my mental health and my spiritual health and all that stuff. I'm able to kind of work with all of these elements in a way that is constructive. So hopefully that's the case for you too, you know. So again, like to use these forecasts the best, it is really good to be able to know your rising sign. You can always email me or put a comment below if you don't know what that is or how to find that. But once you know your rising sign, then you can know the life topics that are going to be pinged by these planets as they run through the zodiac signs. Um, okay. What about the 17th? What else about the 17th? Uh, not too much else. Yeah. Still kind of the same holding pattern. On the 18th, now we're gonna get Moon in Taurus. This is nice. Always gonna love a Moon in Taurus with Jupiter. That's great. They're getting all of this energy now from Capricorn. So the 18th looks like a very productive, constructive, nice day for the most part. I like it. I will say, okay, so Mercury 5 degrees now from Mars on the 18th. So we already said this week was kind of like the 16th through the 23rd or so. It was kind of a little pressurized, maybe a little heavier, might be a little crunchier. Um, the 18th, the 19th looks like we could have some productive progressive days that maybe don't feel as crunchy as the previous couple days. I'll just put it that way because trines are helpful. Uh, Venus, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just this Earth trine. All of it's very nice. Uh, then we get this Venus square Neptune coming in. Let's talk about that. And I mean, that's already heating up today because we're already within like 4 degrees. So this is just increasing. And as much as there's a lot of, really material world stuff that is being kind of discussed between Capricorn and Taurus, all the earthy, practical, pragmatic, realistic kind of stuff. I do like this water, fire, now it's like the fun people, the visionary, imaginative, hopeful, kind of we can do it, we can get there, we can get through the finish line. Like, yes, Saturn is here. Yes, there are limitations. Yes, there are obstacles and delays. But I do like this Venus-Neptune square for giving us a little bit of that kind of indomitable optimism when we might not have optimism otherwise. And might be a little unrealistic, could potentially be, but I think that's actually a nice balance with the rest of the sky right now. So this is also, a chance for decompression from all the serious stuff that's going on in the earth signs. So if you want to escape into fantasy or fun for a little bit with this, that's great. It's putting effort. It could also be putting effort into some kind of artistic pursuit, putting effort into a spiritual pursuit. Great day to discover, explore any of your spiritual artistic things, and problem solve around them if you need to. This is a square. This is of the nature of Mars. So that's why I use words like effort, and we might need to adjust. We might need to pivot or change something. So if we need to, maybe even, through all of this serious heaviness in the earth signs, even though it is kind of constructive looking, it might be heavy. There is this lighter, more fun, playful aspect in the sky right now. So I was really enjoying that was there. Uh, that starts to break up by the 19th, 20th, which then leads us right into all these big ingresses. So by the 19th, what did I write here? Yeah, the 18th feels busy too, just because the moon is making so many connections with other planets. On the 18th, the moon is moving through this first decan, this first 10 degrees of Taurus. And when the moon is in this first 10 degrees of Taurus, it's interacting with Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Mercury. So all those folks. So it feels like kind of a busier day. Then on the 19th, we're interacting more with the outer planets and with the sun. So And those outer planets, they can be busy too, but they don't feel as like daily mundane busy as the inner planets, to me at least. Okay, on the 20th, let's talk about all the big Aquarius stuff. Before I do, let me check in with the chat. Well, hello everyone. Hi, hello Katie. Hello Anna. Nice to see you again. Um, ooh, yeah, we should talk about that anaretic degree thingy too. I always like to touch on that with my little, Hellenistic theory I got from my teachers, just in case people don't know it. Um, so we'll touch on that for a second too. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point because we're actually getting a lot of planets at the end of signs coming up here. Um, Someone's got Sun Pluto opposite their natal sun in a sun perfection year. Yeah, you got a front row seat. That's what I always say about that. It's like, what does it mean if I got this big thing coming up? It's like, well, I'm not sure, but you're going to see. Of all of the people, you're probably going to notice. Um, yeah, I've got Pluto going into my first house. My ascendant is at 8 degrees. No, where's my ascendant? My ascendant's at 8 degrees. My Venus is at 5 degrees. So I've got Pluto coming in hot on at least my Venus. It feels like 5 degrees. I know it's kind of a bigger orb for me. I usually like to use the smaller orb with outer planets, like less than 5. But I could tell when it dipped in there. I could tell when it dipped in there in March. I could tell. So, yeah. So if you're having Pluto feelings, believe yourself. Don't gaslight yourself. I know there are some, traditional or more traditional based astrologers who really will kind of ignore the outers. I am not one of them. I have Neptune on my sun, and the outers are very real, unfortunately, if you can tell what my biases are around them. I try to be non-dual. It doesn't work all the time. Um, Moon in Taurus. Yeah, Moon in Taurus. That's my favorite part of lunation too. Moon in Earth signs this month though, because every time the moon is in Virgo as well, it's in this nice trine, which we'll get to when the moon comes into Virgo here in a few days. It comes into a nice trine with all that Earth stuff, and it makes for, again, more productive, progressive kind of energy. Um, Holly, I'm so happy to hear that this is validating for you. That's always good to hear, and that's also nice for me to hear because that means that hopefully I'm hitting on some stuff. Uh, yeah. Oh, okay. So yeah, we've got people who are definitely going to be um, noticing the Pluto stuff. So yeah, we'll all hold hands together. We'll make it through this. And honestly, like what a rare opportunity to see Pluto change signs. Like it only happens every 15, 20 years or whatever. Like it doesn't happen very often. So, I mean, I feel like it's my Super Bowl. Like I'm just at the edge of my seat, just like I'm so excited to curious to see what this is going to be about. Even like as the moon goes through Gemini, like on the 21st. So here we go, let's start talking about it. This is going to be the first time, I guess. Well, I shouldn't, because, okay, hold on. Where was the sun? Where was the sun back in March when Pluto was in here before? Yeah, I'll just go with that. So now that the sun is here as well, this is like the first waxing gibbous moon that we've had, waxing gibbous moon that we're going to have where Pluto is involved. Like that feels like a big deal. I'm excited to see that. Same thing when the moon gets in this nice waning gibbous. I want to see what these air trines are going to be like now that Pluto is in here. Ah, I'm so excited to see that. So that'll be cool. Um, mm, yeah, Victoria brings up a good point. I was just thinking about this and I threading about this. Like the people who have Libra Pluto, like Pluto and Libra in their birth chart, they're going to be going into their natal Pluto trine. People who have Pluto in Scorpio, you're going to be entering now into your Pluto square. So, trines of bullshit, I usually prefer over squares of bullshit. So, the Libra Pluto people, like hats off, congratulations, you did it. You did your square. Now it's our turn. Now it's the Scorpio Pluto's people's turn to do our Pluto square. Yeah, here we go. Oh, I'm so excited, and that's, okay. You guys are helping guide this discussion so much. So thank you very much. Because another thing too to consider, wherever Pluto is going, now we also can see what does it feel like where Pluto is not. Oh, I am so excited for the Capricorn houses. If you have Capricorn in your seventh, if you've been a Cancer rising, um, as maybe my ex can attest to, who is a Cancer rising, it's been a rough time, huh? Like, it's been a bit of a rough time. And just like very intense or pressurized relationship situations that now are hopefully going to lighten for you all. If you were Capricorn rising, hopefully you now will get a bit more lightness and freedom away from, what can be very oppressive with Pluto. So, yeah, yeah. And I want to say, that's just one shade of Pluto. Pluto can also be a great catalyst, a great just power. So for better or for worse, but we know how power is so hard to hold. So I think that's part of what this is like in the Aquarius place, how do we learn to hold whatever Pluto is going to be having us experience there without it kind of reverberating into something that is not helpful. And we're going to have plenty of time to figure that out. We're going to have 20 years. So in Aquarius, there's so much material online at this point about Pluto and Aquarius. So I'm not going to do like a whole talk about it, but I will say one thing that I've noticed myself, just in my existence as an Aquarius and an Aquarius Venus, um, and watching just Aquarius stuff, just watching Saturn too. And I'm going to say, I was thinking a lot of these things and I felt really validated when I heard not Adam Summer, sorry, Adam Ellenboss, just too many Adams, Adam Ellenboss of Nightlight Astrology, who I really appreciate. He learned Hellenistic from Chris Brennan, I believe. I also learned Hellenistic from Chris Brennan. So we agree on a lot of things, or I agree with him on a lot of things. But he was talking about Aquarius and kind of mentioning in short about the kind of this potential to get overly dogmatic or, almost like for the greater good and losing a bit of ourselves in the process. So I guess I just want to, echo some of those sentiments in my own way. That one thing I've noticed with Aquarius, and part of this could be projection because I, relate with this personally in the past, is this really harsh Saturn, harsh, cold thing, attitude, this harsh, strict, cold attitude, but in the name of something greater, in the name of something better. It is that classic for the greater good mentality that can be placed in any set of beliefs, any of them, any moral set of beliefs. And I think it really shits the bed. I think it really just, it's not helpful. It usually turns into something corrupt. And my greatest concern with Pluto in Aquarius is that our kind of for the greater good mentality will have us actually losing our integrity in how we go about changing the world. Uh, I am of the position that the means do matter. Like the means to the end do matter. It's not that we just have collateral, whatever, and we just stop caring about people, stop caring about this certain thing, or stop caring about that certain thing because, blah, 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 blah to the greater good. And I used to be this way about a lot of healthcare stuff. I was really willing to bully or, trample over things and rules that I thought were not for the greater good, or my trampling upon them was for the greater good or whatever. And it was very self-righteous as well, but that probably comes from my Saturn in Sagittarius. But there's just that danger of kind of losing our integrity in the process. And Saturn traditionally was known for secrets, ignorance, lack of knowledge, actually. It can also be seen as wisdom, especially spiritual wisdom. But parts of what Saturn can be, and Saturn is our traditional ruler of Aquarius, can get kind of funky sometimes if we're not careful. And this is really strange to consider because the modern interpretation of Aquarius is that of the humanitarian, right? Because it's getting conflated with the 11th house and the 11th house of the joy of Jupiter, groups, goodwill, philanthropy, all of that good stuff with Jupiter. I don't find Aquarius to be a humanitarian as much as I consider it to be a tinkerer of systems. And sometimes those systems are human systems, but not all the time. Sometimes it's just analytical systems, algorithms, whatever scientific, electronic system you can think of. If there's people involved, that's just another system to Saturn to, organize and put edges around and rules around. And those rules, okay, and all this is a coin with two sides because the rules of Aquarius are ones that are like, it's the rules of Capricorn that we broke, and now we're going to make our own rules, right? It's like Capricorn are the rule followers, and Aquarius are the ones that are going to break the rules. They'll learn them and then break them. Yeah, but just, kind of that can be great. That can be so necessary. That's civil disobedience, right? That's like, when we do the type of activism that you can't brag about online because it was illegal. Like that's beautiful Aquarius stuff. But at the same time, I think some of those same attitudes can harden us against people. So I digress. That's the rant. That is my soapbox that I wanted to get on about this Pluto and Aquarius business, because then Pluto just ramps it up. It dials it up. It puts power into the mix, and that is inevitably going to complicate stuff. Now, this is also separate from that, not just the complexity of how we hold power. And with the sun here, how, for the next month, we might be saying, how do I either take back my power? How do I hold my power? How do I feel empowered? How do I feel disempowered in what I want to do, where my solar will wants to take me? That might be a question over the next month. Maybe something separate. What was it? Oh yeah, the decentralization of power. Now, this is something that people have talked about a lot. Pluto in Leo, that feels like centralization of power, that one point, that one solar point of power, versus Saturn kind of in Aquarius having that more disruptive energy, that kind of rejecting quality of whatever the solar part of Leo is trying to do. So then we can kind of come up with this idea of what is the opposite of centralization of power? Well, decentralization of power. And we see that in the blockchain, of course. That's one example of a system. And it's like, I love blockchain as an example of a system that is air, an Aquarius system. It's not a system like of bricks and mortar that I can hit with a a shovel or something or a hatchet. I can't break down like this air structure with a shovel like I can the Capricorn ones. I can go to like any institution, not saying I would, but like theoretically, like it reminds me of like the hatchetization movement of women in the turn of the century, end of 1800s into the 1900s, I think it was, when there was the temperance movement. There was a lot of alcoholism in homes, and the wives were understandably upset. And they went out and they started taking, one of them especially, I forget what her name was, but she started this thing where they would take hatchets, like literal hatchets, axes to bars, and tear them apart. Like just tearing the shit apart. That's like what you can do when Pluto is in Capricorn, for instance, or like an Earth situation. We can't do that with blockchain. I would have to like learn code or how to do computery stuff or something. That's not as accessible in like an earthen way. I gotta like think about stuff to like navigate these systems and everything. So yeah, think about, that maybe that's another good last point, just with this big change from this Earth Pluto into this air Pluto, is like the power and control that exists based on like ideas, ideologies, thought, things like that. And that can be in ourselves. That can be like that classical, like our own mind as a prison type of thing, our own mind having power over us in ways we don't appreciate. It can be externally, external systems, ideas, ideologies, all of that. But I think a thing to note too is this is fixed. It's hard to change. It's not that Aquarius doesn't, it's not open to change. It's very open to change. But and this has been said, I'll just cite, I've heard this on the astrology podcast, when they're talking about Aquarius, that I think this was the Aquarius episode that they did, talking about how like, it's not about change or no change. It's about the process of it, of doing it. That can be so laborious and long and difficult in a fixed sign. Take all that how you want to. So that's happening on the 20th. Now Pluto's going to be in here for 9 months. September, it's going to go back. It's going to go back into Capricorn. So we're not quite done with this. There is going to be one last kind of hit of this Pluto in Capricorn business. And that is going to be, how does this work? It didn't work the way I wanted it to. I just want to see exactly what it's going to be. Oh, it's December. I was wrong. Clearly, I haven't memorized. Nope, I was right. It was September. Sorry, y'all. We're just doing this the least efficient way right now. Yeah, because it's going to be in here for like a month in September. September, October. Uh, yeah, we'll just call it that because we'll be back. But Pluto's going to be in Aquarius for 9 months. This winter, fall, it's going to dip back into Capricorn. And then by like end of December, yeah, it'll be back in Aquarius, end of this year. So we're not quite done with the Capricorn stuff, but we'll now get, so if you can think back to March and June of 2023, because that's when we had our very first little dip of Capricorn into Aquarius. Not everyone would have noticed everything. I think it really depends on how early of stuff you have in signs, or late, I guess, anything over here. But if you noticed something March through June, think about that, reflect on that, look at your journal if you don't remember, or look at your calendar, look at your schedule or whatever, any way you track history, look back at that and see what was going on. That might give you a hint about what it's going to be like between now and September. And that note on anaretic degrees. So there is an idea, and it's just an idea. We don't, I don't know if there's a way to know for sure, but there's this notion that the 29th degree of any sign is like kind of this difficult place. And it makes sense in terms of like, this idea of endings, bringing things to a close. And that can sometimes be difficult. It depends. But what's interesting is if we look at the bounds, this most outer circle that I have here, there's 5 distinct chunks of each sign that get separated. And just for clarity, we don't really know at this point exactly how they determined like how big each of these bounds are because they're so irregular in shape and size. Another name for these are the terms. The terms are bounds. There's an Egyptian one and a Chaldean one. I use the Egyptian bounds. The last one of every single sign is a planet that is Saturn or Mars. It's a malefic planet, and malefic, we can remember, can a lot of times just mean instability or extremeness. So the last few degrees of every single sign, at least part of that experience is going to be for the planets that are in those last degrees, a little bit more intense, a little bit more extreme. Demetra George explains this, the bound ruler. It's like, the domicile lord is like the principal of the high school, but the bound ruler is like your homeroom teacher. So like if your homeroom teacher is kind of like martial and intense and like, go, 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 do the stuff, here's more stuff. That could be kind of extreme and intense, right? If your homeroom teacher is Saturn, they're going to be really strict and kind of hard on you. But they also, that planet might be maybe more disciplined, more boundaried, more whatever. So I just recently had a client who had a placement in the last degree of Aries. And there was concerns about impulsivity. And I said, well, you can maybe dial down that impulsivity a little bit because they're in the bound of Saturn. So Saturn's gonna, and it might be frustrating. There might be frustration there when you mix Mars and Saturn stuff, but it's going to flavor everything. So there's an idea that the anaretic degree is partially or could be potentially because of this. Now, yeah, I'm not going to get into anything more about cusps right now, but that's just throwing that out there as a theory of possibly how and why that is the anaretic degree is even a thing. Yeah, there is something to that. So then Pluto's been in this anaretic area, I guess, for like at least a year. It's been in 26, 27, 28 degrees this whole time. So yeah. Um, that's just making it all the more intense, right? And so now the sun is going to be here too. The sun is already in Saturn's bound. The sun is in these more harsh bounds right now of Capricorn. So yeah, this week is kind of like that. Once Sun and Pluto get into Aquarius, I guess being we're here talking about bounds and stuff, we're going to be in the bound of Mercury. We're going to be in the decan of Venus. If we're going by the descending order decans. Uh, this is a little lighter. It's a little less intense and extreme. So I'm looking forward to that little itty bitty shift. Okay, let me see what people are saying in the chat. James, I'm gonna have to look up neighborhood watch and hot fuzz. See what you mean there. Mm. FG has a prediction that OnlyFans will go out of business during Pluto and Aquarius. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's well, we'll have to see. It's an interesting hypothesis. I wonder when it started, like what year it started. Yeah, I would. It's actually a really interesting. It's a really interesting question. If you're an astrologer, like if you're into this stuff, FG, that would be a great little analysis you could do of just like looking when did it start? Like when did that website get launched? Look at when they had big news stories. See if you can see like a pattern of what Saturn or Pluto or any of these big hit, maybe even Mars or maybe even Venus, because Venus has a lot to do with equality and justice. And I think sex worker and sex worker rights fit right in with Venus a lot of times. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the cycles are and if any of them fit. Or like, for instance, okay, Pluto went into Aquarius March through June. Did anything happen with OnlyFans March through June or what happened? I'm sure something happened. Something's always going on with them, but like see what happened then. And I'm very curious to know. That's a good, I might look into that a little bit. Uh, yeah, Jade Roscoe says Aquarius is the I'm not going to stay in any one lane mindset. I mean, yeah, I think generally speaking, yeah, because they're open to different lanes. I do think once they get into a lane, they've like thought about it for 10 years, they can write a thesis about it and they could change their mind, but good luck trying to change their mind, like that fixed air kind of thing. I see it's like and Austin Coppock gives one of the best examples of this Aquarius fixed air thing. And we think about Saturn, being kind of rejection, what is rejected, versus Leo being, this is an oversimplification, but in comparison to Aquarius, Leo's like the captain of the football team. Austin Coppock talks about Aquarius being like the goth kid. It's like, well, they're going to be the goth kid every day. They've committed to this. They're not showing up, like a different person every day. They're not Gemini, being flexible and adaptable and, that kind of mutable changeability. But also the revolutionary. If you're going to overthrow a government, you better be so stubborn. You better not just change your mind if you need to do a whole revolution. You better be so steadfast in your ideas and again, not meaning that you're not open to change, but It's almost a, and this is where that Venn diagram of Uranus and Aquarius makes so much sense to me in that it is paradoxical. It is such a paradoxical place. Um, so yeah, it's really interesting, but yeah, the lanes. Let's see. Hello, Timothy Reynolds. Hoot hoot. Ah, I don't know if anyone saw this. Total digression. Go on my Instagram. Actually, did I put it on my now I'm not sure. Maybe it's on Threads. I got a really good picture of an owl outside of my window, which is cool because I think I'd been talking about owls right before that, like the week before. And yeah, I saw an owl and I watched it for a few minutes and took a picture of it through my binoculars, all shitty like, it's good. I put it online. Uh, welcome. Reverend Kai says Carrie Nation was the prohibitionist. Oh, okay. Yes. That's so cool that, oh my gosh, this is so perfect. I love it. Yeah, I saw this on like some Nova or PBS special or something about prohibition, but Carrie Nation is the name of the hatchetization lady who was like tearing shit down. Yeah. She's a local legend where Reverend Kai is from, just so everyone knows. That's cool. Um, good question. Will hackers become more prevalent during Pluto and Aquarius, or will they go down? Well, so now I'm wondering, this question more feels to me like Neptune, Saturn in Pisces, because Neptune in Pisces, I know it's been there for a long time, but that Instagram scammer thing was wild for a while. I wasted probably 2 to 3 days of work, entire work that I could have been doing with astrology on managing Instagram scammers. And they actually got somebody. Like there was someone who I was from my personal life, unfortunately, who got by one of these scammers and but fortunately, the scammer was an idiot and they did it really stupid. So the person didn't lose any money. They had sent me money. I was like, why did you send me money? And I gave back to them. It was a whole thing. Now that Saturn is back, or I go, oh yeah, they're back, after 30 years of being away. But Saturn going into Pisces seems to be a little lessening of that. It's like more, I don't know, boundaries. Saturn is no, Saturn is less. Saturn is what is real, not what is fake. So Saturn is the enforcement of the law. So I do think that for me, that's what I'm looking at, thinking about those scammers. But I mean, I would assume like, okay, I mean, Pluto and Aquarius, all of the tech stuff, listen to Adam Summer and Chris Brennan talk about the Pluto and Aquarius if you want to learn about like all the tech stuff with that. But I would be interested to think about what happens with hacking and hackers during that time because Aquarius is kind of part of their realm, I feel like. Um, that's a good question. I don't know. Um, oh, thank you for these deets, Diana. Yeah, I'll do these deets for the Virgo people out there. I was Pisceing it up and I was like, I'll get to those dates when we get to August. But for those of you who are wondering, Pluto will dip back into Capricorn at the anaretic degree on September 2nd, 2024, till November 19th. Thank you, Diana. I appreciate that. Takes a village. Yeah, and look too at your sect, y'all. Don't forget about sect because let's say you are a day baby and you have a planet or there's a planet transiting in Saturn's bound. You're going to experience that nicer than a night baby versus like when planets are in a Mars bound. That is different for, this is my professional opinion, but that's different than if you're a night baby and you're experiencing a planet in a Martial bound. So definitely don't, before people get, concerned that it's going to be the worst, really depends on your sect, how constructive or not that could play out because I'm a big believer in malefics being functionally benefic sometimes. So beep, beep, beep. Yeah, Reverend Kai, I like how you're talking about this here. Mathematically, cusps, this is what Reverend Kai says. Mathematically, cusps are the point where the function sort of breaks down and the derivative becomes discontinuous. That sounds like math words that I don't know, but I kind of picking up what you're putting down. Well, yeah, and this just reflects to me like the very visual experience of looking at the sky. Like if you ask me, like, where does Capricorn end and Aquarius begin? I couldn't tell you. I'd just kind of be pointing like somewhere around there. And okay, I wasn't going to get into it, but I'm going to say it. This was the thing I said I wasn't going to get into. But there are some ancient authors, and I don't know which ones. I don't remember, but I know that I heard a teacher say once that there was some argument in those last few degrees, those last like 3 to 5 degrees or whatever they chose of signs, where a planet at the end of a sign would start to take on the characteristics of the next sign. So the whole thing that the modern astrologer folks are always talking about like planets on cusps. And for the most part, I'm like, it's either in or it's out. I have to cut it off somewhere at the same exact time. Like again, when I look up at the sky, I can't tell the difference. So of course it makes sense to me that, yeah, maybe, a planet at the end of one sign is starting to take on the attributes of the next sign potentially, or start to get in touch with them. Another way I like to think of this is like, all right, for instance, Mercury just got into Capricorn. Let's say Mercury was at like, and they've been here for days, they've been here for 2 days. So if you're out there and you've got like a planet at like 2 or 3 degrees, look at how fast that planet moves. If they've been in there for days, I don't care if they're at 1 degree. They've been in there for days. But let's say like that planet had just gotten in there, like they're at, I don't know, 0 degrees or something. This reminds me of like, imagine when you are outside and it's -5 degrees out and you come inside, you are still cold. You are still cold because you were just in 5 degree temperatures. You're probably taking off your parka and your mittens and your hat and you're doing all this stuff and kind of getting acclimated to the next place. And there is this thing about like a new start and some kind of beginning here of being in a new environment and needing to kind of figure that out. And then likewise, it makes sense that after that planet has gone through the whole sign and by the time they get to the end, that they've experienced a lot more of that sign in the terrain and they might have some kind of special understanding. I'm not sure. But yeah, yeah. I think some of that extremeness, intensity at the end comes from those bound rulers being extreme, intense planets. Phew, I don't even remember where we were. That was a great discussion. Thank you, everyone. Great contributions. Holy cow. Yes, Pluto's the destroyer. I think Pluto, sometimes what I see them doing for me, and for other people, I guess, is how do I say this? Uh, it's like when you know you need to change something, but you haven't yet. Like, and you know that you need to go down a path, but you haven't yet. And I think sometimes Pluto kind of starts to insert themselves and change things around so that you do change that thing or go on that path. And it's like if we don't do it ourselves, by the time Pluto comes around to those topics, sometimes if they do it all, that's a dice roll. Yeah, they're gonna sometimes destroy things and create things in their place, but it's usually kind of heavy or intense because that's Pluto. Okay, the sun moves in here on the 20th. Some more exact kind of Virgo-y timestamps here. So on the 20th of January, the sun ingresses into Aquarius at 8:10 in the morning Central Time. Pluto ingresses after that in the evening at 6:56 p.m. Central Time. I do think that it's interesting that at this point, they're both going to be out of view of the malefics. So once Pluto gets in here, at least for the time being, for the next few weeks, uh, both Mars and Saturn cannot see Pluto. So that'll be interesting. They're, at least that I feel like that dials down a little bit of intensity that might be there otherwise. So that's another thing that kind of makes me feel a little bit softer about this Pluto ingress. I'm not like, it's fine. It is what it is. Let's see, moon is separating from. Oh yeah, then on the 20th too, the moon is separating from an overcoming square from Saturn. So I guess just to review the moon, because they're going to be our most, lived experience, I think. Today and tomorrow, Aries moon, maybe intense, maybe pressurized, maybe a sense of urgency, could just be frustrating or, you know, fast. That's Aries. Then we've got the 17th and 18th, Taurus moon, a little softer, little bit less extreme. And then on the 20th, we have Gemini moon, which gets an overcoming square from Saturn, which can feel a little slow, a little delay in the day. You know, if this is at the beginning of your day, like let's say if you are on the West Coast or in like Hawaii or something, this would be at the beginning of your day. If you're in the Midwest, the moon is still applying to the square with, or yeah, the square with Saturn in the middle of the day. This is not when I'm going to go ask my boss for a raise. This is not when I'm going to go ask anyone for anything. Saturn is no. So, I don't know. I'm just going to probably keep to myself on the 20th if I want to ask for stuff. But it is a good time to, put effort into fact finding if you need to fact find. 21st feels a little bit lighter, especially with Moon past that overcoming square with Saturn. And then we get to start applying to Venus. So 20th, well, that's just okay. 21st feels a little better. A little bit more get up and go, I think, too, with that moon opposite that Venus Sagittarius. It's a little bit more encouraging and fun and enlivening. Mercury is applying to a conjunction with Mars at this point, much closer. This is so just a powerhouse for investigation, science, analysis, doing cognitive labor, doing physical labor. It's just very powerful. It is also very sharp. So watch your words, watch your mouth if you need to. If you're me, you definitely need to watch my mouth sometimes. Can be quick to speak. We can speak, especially it's so funny. I have a Mercury in Capricorn. And I remember learning in like grammar or whatever, which I don't even like grammar. I don't like these rules. Then this is my Aquarius coming through. I don't like all these grammar rules. I found out like prepositions, like you don't end a sentence in a preposition just because like some dude preferred that once. Like, I know what the sentence is for. Who got that? I know what it's for. I can end a sentence in a preposition. So all that being said, Capricorn, my main point is they can just be very declarative. They can just kind of say stuff in a very like blunt, declarative way. And I remember learning that word declarative when I was in grammar class. And declarative was a type of statement that just states something. It just says like the shoe is red. Declarative statement. I'm declaring something. It's not an opinion. It's just a fact. And like declarative, that is so how Capricorn speaks. So when we get Mercury and Mars in Capricorn, I think sometimes like this is that classic, like I just said something and people took it as me being harsh or mad at them or, my resting bitch face is coming out or, whatever it is. But really it's like, I was just saying like the curtains are blue. Like I'm just making a declarative statement. I didn't mean anything by it. Like I think sometimes we can run into that whole thing when Mercury and Mars. So on the 21st, just you might need to soften up speech. 21st, longer than that. So let's just look at 21st through maybe like the end of the month. So like the last 10 days of the month, basically, our words might be sharper, they might hit sharper, but also like very effective blade, very effective. So again, if you have things to get done, plans to make, thinking to do, any of that, this last 10 days of January, really, really helpful. Once Venus gets in here, January 23rd? That softens things up. But she's not as close. So I'm still extending this kind of, if you're talking to a soft little old lady or something, you might need to be softer depending on who it is. And that starts like the 21st at least, but the 23rd, I think that helps a lot because Venus is now in there. She's going to soften some of those maybe rougher edges that Capricorn can have sometimes. No offense to Capricorns. I am one. So I might be projecting, my own Capricorn-y rough edges. Maybe other Capricorns, maybe you're a Capricorn person and you have Venus in there. Maybe you're more of a smoother operator than I am. But yeah, Mercury, Mars can be sharp. It can be. Uh, yeah, so that's the 23rd that Venus enters Capricorn, uh, Moon in Cancer. So what we have had is this cool mutual reception between Venus and Jupiter. And that's been the case since what, December 8th? And the Taurus and Sagittarius, yeah, or no, sorry. I don't know anything. December like 30th, end of December. So pretty much for most of January, we've had this mutual reception. And this mutual reception has really been helping us to put together these Sagittarius and Taurus house topics in a more productive way. Uh, the abundance that we've had in Taurus in those areas of life that are described by the house topics that Taurus is in. They've been finally able to connect with the Sagittarius part of our chart a little bit better. That's been cool. Now we're going to lose that, but we are going to get not like a domicile-based mutual reception where a planet is in another planet's sign and that planet's in their sign and they're in each other's signs. This is kind of a mixed version. We've got Saturn in a place where Venus is exalted. And I don't know. Some astrologers aren't going to count this. I don't usually count a lot of more exotic combinations of mutual reception. But if you do, this could be one. So we've got Saturn seeing Venus in Saturn's sign. Saturn's like, hey, you're in my house. Cool. And then Venus is seeing Saturn in Venus's exalted place. Venus is like, hey, that's where I go when I'm like the guest of honor. That's my like guest house, where I go on vacation. That's cool. So they're kind of having this special relationship, I think, that's very productive. It's in a nice sextile. So yeah, I really like Venus coming into Capricorn on the 23rd of January. And for all of the kind of constructive, productive things we've been having in these nocturnal signs, now it's more. It's even more. So we again look to those house topics that are in Taurus, Pisces, Capricorn, and see how you can squish them together in ways that make your life better. So again, for me, that would be like my mental health, my money, and my home. How can I make those work together really nice? January is a good time to do that. You might have the wind at your back a little bit. Yeah, and just Venus and Jupiter in a trine. Look at that. That's so nice. I like this very much. This whole last week of the month, they're just, Venus is applying to Jupiter for most of it. They perfect, looks like on the 28th of January, we get an exact Venus-Jupiter trine across Earth. So again, very material world. And again, material world, it doesn't just mean, showing up at your job and making money and paying your bills. And it also means, dealing with the mundane things of the material world. I have to feed myself. I want to achieve stuff, before I die. That's very material world, I know we don't think of like achievement as like a mundane earth thing, but I think it is. So yeah, good day for that. They're a good week for that, especially if you want to achieve things in Capricorn and Taurus. Sun square Jupiter. That's fun too. So okay, so we get the ingresses. We have Venus ingressing into Capricorn. That kind of shifts the energy a bit on the 23rd. And about the same time, we've got Sun and Pluto squaring Jupiter. I missed this. I should have mentioned this when we were talking about Sun ingressing into Capricorn on the 20th. Is going to enter into that square, but that's just going to heat up too. This is very invigorating, very enlivening. That Sun-Jupiter square can just give us a sense of confidence, of reassurance. Sometimes it can have us maybe overextending, expanding too much too quickly. So just make sure that, whatever you're feeling really like you're wanting to say yes to, maybe on like the 20th especially like the closer we get to like the 25th, 26th. If you're looking at maybe saying yes to something, just make sure that it's a situation where you feel empowered, where there's not any weird power dynamics, like you're not taking on more than you can, and like you're not saying yes or taking things on just because you feel pressured to. So could be really invigorating, really enlivening to have this Sun-Jupiter square, but sometimes it can have us kind of going too big, going too large, putting too much plate on our food when we weren't actually that hungry. That can be the thing. What else? Mars squaring Chiron. Oh, it's got this waxing moon. Um, yeah, this is. So this happens the 23rd too. So Venus is moving into Capricorn. The Sun and Pluto are squaring Jupiter. Whoa, maybe we can move mountains. I'm not sure. But we're also getting this Chiron Mars Moon T square, which is it's uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable. It can be hard sometimes to know if something is healing or not. And this feels like that, like potentially some confusion, like around with Chiron being so close to Rahu, which I also, it's like when I think about Rahu adding confusion and frenziedness to Chiron, which can be about healing, it's like, does this hurt because it hurts or does this hurt because it's healing? It's like, if it burns, does that mean it's working? Or if it burns, should I be calling 911? Which sometimes I take a tincture and I'm like, okay, if it burns, it's working. It's really working. So, I guess on the 23rd, yeah, just making sure we're really taking care of ourselves and not overextending on the behalf of others if we feel pressured from others. Cancer Moon is going to have a really good tune in to what is needed. So on the 23rd, 24th, really pay attention to your needs. Don't, gaslight yourself. If you need a nap, you need a nap. If you need to step out of something, step out for a few minutes. If you're feeling kind of like internally frustrated, internally crunchy for some reason, just general internal discomfort because Mars and Moon, they're in these nocturnal earth and water signs. A lot of this might be kind of inside, kind of frustration or something like that. you know, maybe there is some healing part of that. Maybe it is part of some healing process. When we see these T squares, the square part in the middle of the opposition, that, the modern astrologers talk about that being like a point of release. And that makes sense to me because these are all like squares with this opposition too. So squares, pivoting, adjusting. We got to pivot or adjust something between Capricorn and Cancer. Um, being able to do all the things we're obligated and needing to do versus taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're able to sustainably show up to things, that whole chestnut, right? How can we, maybe make some uncomfortable changes in order to heal, in order to feel better? There might be some of that going on here on the 23rd, 24th. Yeah, and that just, yeah, 23rd, 24th, 25th. We're going to finally see that start to wane, that Mars Chiron square will begin to wane. So yeah, this week, mm, it just feels like, yeah, forward moving, but not, it doesn't feel like a leisurely week, you know? And that's okay. So that's kind of crunchy. Yeah, the 23rd or the 24th feels better than the 23rd. If we look at the 24th, or sorry, the 23rd, we've got the moon applying to an opposition with Mars. We've got the moon applying to a square with Chiron. On the 24th, we're past that. So that's why I think that the 24th on Wednesday is going to feel better than the 23rd on Tuesday. Let's talk about the Leo full moon. But before we do, I'm going to check in with this chat. Yes, Jade Roscoe says Pluto is the third malefic. I agree. Like, if malefics are unstable and intense, yep. And I think a lot of the stuff that got put onto Pluto, I mean, before we had Pluto, a lot of that stuff was interpreted coming through Mars and Saturn. So, yeah, right on. Yep. FG bringing in tarot correspondences, which I love, which we'll get to when we're talking about this because I like to do the decans thing. Pluto is like death, the death card in tarot. Transmutation of stuff, of course. And that's not really a guarantee either. Struggle does not make one into a teacher necessarily. It's hard to, and struggle does not mean that you will have the privilege, the conditions, the support to transmute things. So transmutation is not a guarantee, and it is hard work sometimes, and not all of us have kind of the support I think we need to do that transmutation thingy in the best way possible. Pluto's hard. Yeah, Jade says no texting with Mars and Mercury. Yeah, if you're like me and you can be spicy, you got to watch yourself sometimes with that a little bit. Um, let's talk about this Leo full moon. So I'm very, very excited. This is like the lunar anniversary for me and my partner. We had our first date about a year ago on the Leo full moon. And I will never forget because I walked into this coffee shop after getting so brave in order to do this date. And I look at the wall and there's like this tile mural on the wall, and it was a sun and a full moon. And it was on a full moon day. It was really cute. So, anyway, here we are, one lunar year later, and we have a Leo full moon again. Let's look at it. It's also well, yeah, this is again, I guess our first full moon with Pluto here, right? So this is just so exciting to me. All these configurations now, we get to experience them anew with the Pluto layer on top. We've got Jupiter and Saturn coming in. I mean, the Capricorn planets can't totally see into here, but I'm even going to throw in Venus a little bit because the other planets can see Venus, and so maybe she has something to say about this lunation in kind of a roundabout, indirect way. But overall, again, like just all of these elements, there is a potential here. Anytime there's a trine or a sextile, there is a potential for growth, expansion, opportunity, collaboration, bringing things together in a way that turns into something in the same way that we have more of an opportunity to make a loaf of bread if we put flour and salt and water and yeast together. This is an opportunity to do stuff like that. So when I talk about like progressiveness or progress or constructivity or getting shit done or all that stuff, I know some people can get a little kind of turned off by that kind of language, which I can understand because rest is revolutionary, and I totally agree. But my job is to kind of tell people, okay, well, cosmically, when is the wind at your back for doing certain stuff, and when is the wind not at your back for doing certain stuff? I'm not making a moral kind of statement about progress versus rest, or even a personal preference of progress versus rest. I digress. I come back to the full moon in Leo. It looks like we can make a loaf of bread. It looks good. I like it. But too, again, that Jupiter squaring the luminaries and Jupiter with Pluto there now too, that invigorating optimism and that potential feeling of strength just make sure it's going to be sustainable in the long run with all of these Capricorn planets. And we just got out of this Capricorn new moon. So I think a lot of the stuff that we're starting here, we want it to be sustainable for the long run. I don't think we want it to be like this, thing that we end up building and it kind of almost can grow too fast sometimes and then tips over. So you don't say yes to too many things when this moon is very, very bright. Uh, Now the sun is technically in charge of this full moon because the sun rules Leo. The sun can see the moon, so that's good. But the sun isn't really that well resourced in Aquarius. So it's not like we're, as much as like the moon is wanting to express itself and do a bunch of, be active, fire, I'm compelled to act. I'm compelled to do this thing based on what I am feeling. That can be kind of hard if the sun is maybe doubting or, like that's the great thing about Aquarius is that it is a function of doubt that can help us investigate and learn more so that we can, expand our understanding. But it's not like the most confident, thing. Now, again, Jupiter helps with that a lot. I'm almost like worried about some of that confidence. But there is a bit of an opposition here between some of these Saturn and solar types of principles of, being fun and playful and bright and shining and being more objective or rational or observing or waiting. Let's bring in some of the Deccan stuff. So I'm going to actually, oh, good. I do have my overwhelming wheel up. Usually I take it down. So Sun is in the first decan. And the first decan, so speaking of tarot correspondences, it is the Five of Swords. And I love T. Susan Chang's book, 36 Secrets, which I reference for this. And I also have Austin Coppock's Decans knowledge kind of tucked away in my brain. So a lot of my references come from his work as well with Decans. But what I understand about this first decan of Aquarius is really going out. One way is kind of going out from what is known, going out from what is comfortable, even just intellectually, in order to find something new and better. And there can be this idea of, what do I take with, what do I leave behind? That comes from Austin Coppock. He mentions it like that. It's kind of like this cognitive cost benefit analysis of like, I'm going to this new place. I'm going to try this new thing. I have to be resourceful. I'm going to, I don't like Capricorn's rules. I'm going to make up my own rules over here. And it can be difficult. It's like you got to be resourceful like MacGyver here in this first decan. So what does T. Susan Chang say about it? She mentions going out of comfort in search of something better. So she says similar things to what Austin Coppock's saying there. Noticing expectations that are unrealistic or too pressurized or being hard on the self or others. I'm paraphrasing there. So this idea of really like that Saturn kind of standard, and it could be unrealistic potentially. And then kind of the classic, I think, more Five of Swords understanding of, air, swords, mental thinking, thoughts, churning of thoughts, overthinking, or kind of struggling and having some cognitive dissonance about some things. So this would be happening again with the house topics that are in Aquarius for you specifically. So geez, I wonder how I'm going to be feeling about myself. I might be hard on myself in my first house. I might be overthinking about myself. That sounds about right. It's usually like that. Now, the moon in the first decan of Leo. This is in Saturn's decan, and Austin Coppock's work really illuminated this so much for me because so many times people have Leo placements, like a Leo sun, a Leo moon, and they expect themselves to be a leader. They expect themselves to be, I don't know, all these like out in the open and seen and comfortable with being seen and comfortable being the leader and comfortable being out in the open. And they're not all the time. Not all Leos feel like that. And that can have to do with where their sun is. Sun in Aquarius might not have that same level of propensity. But also this first decan that's, if we go by the descending Chaldean order, we have Saturn. And Saturn is doubt. Saturn is no. Saturn is high standards and authority. And Austin Coppock talks about it like, you're sitting on the wings of the stage and you're not even sure if you should go out there. It's like, I don't know if I want to be seen yet. I don't know if I'm ready to be seen. This can be this kind of trepidation that happens before we go out and do something. So this does, I mean, as much as full moons are culminations and peaks and fruitings, it's like, oh, here's what I've figured out. Here's my realization. Here's what this has led to over the last 2 weeks. Um, there is kind of I don't know, like an energy of unsurety, an energy of like an unsure beginning of some kind that is still the deal because we are in this first decan, bit of a beginning energy there. So then Sun is in, or sorry, Moon is in that first decan of Leo, and uh, T. Susan Chang talks about that first decan of Leo. So now this is the Five of Wands. And so if we think about, um, air, swords, kind of that churning of the mental places, with wands, it's kind of churning of action, churning of fire. So it's like busyness and endeavoring. And she says, talks about putting in effort, more high pressure situations, maybe to the point of performance anxiety, which again fits a lot with what we were just talking about with Saturn ruling over this decan. Busy with action or people, quote unquote, the point is not perfection, but to discover what inner excellence hides inside you. So that was a quote from Leo 1 from T. Susan Chang. The point is not perfection, but to discover what inner excellence hides inside of you. So again, there's something that just feels like it's coming forth with this new moon that is, So yeah, I don't know, maybe I take back what I said because I had been kind of a little concerned about, that Jupiter Sun classic overconfidence potentially going into bombastic or belligerence, right? That can happen with Sun and Jupiter square. But the rest of this doesn't sound like that at all. So maybe we don't need to worry so much about that. Maybe we will be kind of balanced in what we say yes to and what we're taking on. And maybe we will be able to, with some of that kind of discernment and maybe even a little bit of doubt, has us being a little bit more careful or methodical in what we're doing. Yeah. What else about this? Mars is still kind of squaring Chiron. Mercury's pretty much with Mars here. So all that stuff still kind of applies. Yeah, it's not the most comfortable skies. So be kind to each other, be kind to yourself on this Leo full moon. And again, like with Chiron, things can be healing. We can get onto the other side of that wound, I think, sometimes. We still got okay, let's be positive. Look at this though. Venus trine Jupiter though. That's definitely going on here. So that just really, I mean, if there was some edges or some sharpness to this guy or some challenges or, feelings of, in that first decan, maybe high pressure or lack of certainty or doubt or, being hard on the self, we do have a nice balance in the sky that might be a little bubble wrap around all that. It might soften some of those difficulties a little bit, or, maybe at least if we're having those difficulties, we'll have some support around us, hopefully. So yeah, we might have to be brave. We might have to kind of put ourselves out there in a powerful way, even if it's scary in this kind of next 10 days. And then we get the moon in Virgo. And now this is what I was talking about, these earth moons. It's really nice trine, earth trine. So it's all those, mundane material, 3D world activities going along just dandy, going along just fine. The 27th, one little caveat, we got the moon applying to Saturn. It happens once every month. So the 27th, another day where don't ask your boss for a raise. Answer might be no, or you might have to like negotiate a lot more than you want to. But once the moon gets away from that opposition with Saturn, which will be approximately, let's see, Well, pretty much the 28th. We got to wait till about the 28th for that. So the 28th looks better. And then we get not so much the delays and difficulties with that opposition to Saturn, but much more of the helpful trine. And God, look at this though. I mean, God, I don't even care so much about, maybe I don't care so much about that Saturn because it seems that maybe it's some kind of constructive delay. Maybe it's a constructive like discipline or limiting, or maybe it's working with our limitations in a really constructive way. There's a lot of help here. Yeah. I like the 27th and the 28th. I like those days. I know it's super vague too. I'm just like kind of giving thumbs up or thumbs down to certain things, like certain days, but I'm like, yeah, I mean, like a weather forecaster, they're either giving me like a cloud or a sun, and that's like good enough for me most days. It can validate, like, why am I feeling like this? And I open the window and I'm like, oh, it's cloudy. Yeah, of course. Um, so yeah, I know that's vague, but like honestly, I think that's valuable still. Uranus stationing direct. So this is kind of an interesting thing. Like, what is it when outer planets are stationing? Because they station, I mean, they go retrograde for months at a time. And I don't pay attention a ton to that middle part of that retrograde journey for an outer planet like Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. But what I do really like to pay attention to are the stations. So when are they changing direction, and the days or weeks around that station, that planet is just louder, louder, louder. So also this last 10 days of the month, Uranus is stationing direct. So changes in the Taurus part of your chart might be louder, or disruptions in the Taurus part of your chart might be louder. Um, Doing things differently, novelty. Maybe you're just trying new stuff. Maybe you're just expressing yourself differently. Maybe you're a Taurus rising and you're just doing things new in general. It can be a need, an extra need for some independence and some just doing your own thing. So if at the end of January, people need more space, people need more freedom, give it to them, let them do their own thingy for a while. Anytime Uranus is louder, like life can just feel a little itchy. Like, yeah, there's just not enough room for me to be me, and I need to go do this thing. So we might need that at the end of the month. Um, This is about the same time too that Mars is coming into a trine with that Uranus that is just stationing. So yeah, like especially maybe like the very end of January, if people are needing more space, needing more independence, especially because Mars is that planet of like, I'm gonna do this thing. This is the action I'm going to take. This is my intention. This is my motivation. And when we put that with kind of that independent, freedom-loving flair of Uranus, it's like, yeah, we're doing what we're wanting to do. And they're both talking very harmoniously together through a trine. So it could be very constructive. It's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna let the dog off the leash, but it's because they're gonna go truffle hunting for me. Like, all right, let the dog off the leash, and it might actually be kind of constructive. So many things perfecting on the 27th. So yeah, 27th, 28th are feeling pretty important. I'd mentioned like 16th, 17th, 18th of the month, very important. I'm going to also say 27th, 28th, looking pretty important just because of all of the configurations kind of perfecting all this stuff at like 6 and 7 degrees. And the moon really interacting with all of it. The moon is interacting with like all of it. So yeah, we'll be feeling it. Uh, One last thing about Uranus stations. So yeah, stations are loud. I also kind of wonder too, this is a theory. If Uranus is disruption and if retrograde is inconsistency of what that planet does, then does that mean that Uranus retrograde is inconsistency in that disruption? So is the disruption disrupted when Uranus is retrograde? And then when Uranus is back direct, that means that it's back up to its normal bullshit, back on its bullshit. That's my theory. Probably not true all the time, but yeah, it's like I guess maybe Uranus is going to just be kicking it even more as Uranus in the future. So this is where we must embrace change in our Taurus place. We must embrace doing novel things, doing things differently, introducing novelty into that area, just as little therapy for that Uranus. They like new things. What else? There's a benefic enclosure on the 28th. Actually, before I get to that, let me talk about this Mercury-Mars conjunction. That also perfects. And it's exactly square the nodes. That was the thing that was so interesting to me around the 27th, 28th, is the place that's square the nodes is called the bendings of the lunar nodes. And Demetra George in her Ancient Astrology Volume 1 talks about what it's like for a planet being at the lunar nodes, and in particular, like the moon being there. Because every planet has nodes. Like there are Saturnian nodes, Pluto has its own nodes. Mark Jones is who you want to go to learn about the nodes of the other planets. And there's this idea that, maybe with the lunar nodes, well, who's going to experience that bending the most? Well, the sun and the moon, or the moon, because that's its kind of, I guess, what would you call that? Because the nodes are the points on that lunar path, It's not going to be the same as the nodes on a different planet's path. So the question then for me that I'm still working through is, when other planets who aren't the moon are on the lunar bendings, does it matter as much as when the moon is there? Because how Demetra George talks about it in Ancient Astrology Volume 1, is the moon at the bendings has this really objective, kind of rational point of view, because at the bendings, this is where the path of the sun and the moon are the furthest away by declination. So at the nodes, those are the eclipse points. The sun and the moon are at the same height in the sky, so they're able to get in each other's way. If they are at the bendings of the nodes 90 degrees away, their paths they get about 4 or 5 degrees away, I think. It's not much. But they can no longer occlude each other, right? And there's a symbolism here that if the symbolism of the sun and the symbolism of the moon are very separate from each other, that the sun, our spirit, the moon, our body, and they're not kind of intertwined, we can maybe step away from our material feelings. We can step away from our material biases and desire for achievement and feelings and all these material moon things. And we can separate spirit and intellect, sun, from that, or that type of intellect. There's many types of intellect. And get kind of this rational point of view. That's what was in her book. I'm paraphrasing. I do see, moon bending people. They're very rational, logical people. They are. They're able to kind of take their feelings out of things sometimes, for better or for worse. It's not always a good thing. It can be harder to connect. That was the other side of that coin that Demetra mentioned, was, on the other side of that, it might be kind of difficult to connect in that more aligned way with, body, mind, spirit, or not just being, purely rational. Being more subjective might be harder. What does it mean then to have Mercury and Mars here at this bending? Are they having a more rational, kind of realistic approach to how to balance the Libra Aries stuff? Let's say you're a Aries rising or something, and you're trying to balance things between you and partnerships. Maybe around the 28th of January, you get this really kind of clear view of that dilemma. Like, this is how I navigate it, or, oh, here's an idea about how I could navigate this. So I think Capricorn is going to help out actually being here a bit on the 27th, 28th, square the nodes. It's like, how do I deal with this Libra Aries axes things? So for me, this is like my 3rd and my 9th. And this probably has to do with my communication and my writing and my teaching and my learning for myself. And how do I balance all of that? How do I balance what I'm doing in my 3rd with what I'm doing in my 9th? And, for me, maybe the answer is in my 12th house of Capricorn. Maybe I need to do my spiritual practices and watch my own bobber, and just do my mental, emotional, spiritual health stuff. Maybe that's my answer to that dilemma. I don't know how, but maybe it is. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas on what you can do with that period of time. Benefic Enclosure on the 28th. The moon is going to be just for a minute in this amazing Earth triangle situation, and that is from 1:27 in the morning Central Time to 3:09 in the morning Central Time. So it's really only like an hour and a half, but Universal Standard Time or whatever, UTC, that's 7:30 in the morning to 9 in the morning. So that's more accessible for people who are in that time zone. People who are in time zones further and further east, like if you are in Oceania, Australia, that's going to be more at like the end of your day. So, the further west you are, the less accessible that benefic enclosure is. The further east you are of the time zones, the more accessible you'll have. But anyway, benefic enclosure, it's on the 28th. It looks really nice. I might even stay up late. I might just get up and do something. I might set my alarm. And Venus completes the trine with Jupiter right after the moon passes through both of them. So, or right after those rays all connect. Mars is applying to that trine with Uranus at the same time. So, like, yeah, it could be some breakthrough energy. Helpful energy. I like this. Okay. 29th, 30th, 31st. Let's wrap up things here. Yeah, geez. Been here for 2 hours. Oops. The point where it was for these things to get shorter. And that is not always the case. So yeah, 27th, 28th, 29th. Not much to say. I don't have much to say, at least. 30th. Yeah, so now this is another little interesting point. Getting to experience air trines with Sun and Pluto. We get another opportunity on the 30th and the 31st with the Libra Moon. There's a lot of, yeah, I mean, if there is any, I guess maybe one other thing to say. So let's say this Mars-Uranus trine across Capricorn Taurus is funky, and there is just something like really disruptive or interruptive on, and that was like more like the 27th, 28th. The trine means that we'll get through it okay. So yeah, like really heating up 27th, 28th, 29th, perfects on 29th, 30th between Mars and Uranus. If there is something unstable, new surprise, whatever challenge it is, it's a trine. So at worst, we'll be able to just navigate it and get through kind of unscathed. So I'm not, this could be very helpful. And at worst, I'm just not that worried about it because it's a trine. And because benefics are present. Anytime the benefics, especially, are present, I have a lot of people who get nervous because I'm always doing Hellenistic astrology with my elections. And with election stuff, that's one area where I guess I do use the outers a little bit less, because if I was to get the perfect election, if I was to try to get a perfect election, I mean, that there's no such thing in the first place, but it's already almost impossible if I'm considering like not the malef or not the outers. If I add in the outer planets, oh, it's like impossible. So, I end up having certain elections where sometimes Uranus is on stuff or near stuff. And the thing is that if there's benefics around, I don't really care, because even though it might be kind of wild, like it'll turn out more times than not to be wild in a good way, or disruptive in a positive or helpful way, or new and exciting and just kind of out of your comfort zone. So, yeah, I'm not worried about this. I elected a few things last year with Jupiter and Uranus, and I had one person be really, really concerned. But yeah, you can't make me that worried about it. One interesting thing, I guess I'll give a little example from my own life. So I'm Aquarius rising, so I've got this Taurus in my whole sign fourth house. And part of what happened this year is we had a big storm tear down a bunch of trees. My family is very blessed to have a piece of land in Minnesota, and on that little piece of land, we've got some oak trees, and a few of those oak trees lost a lot of branches, or we lost the whole tree. And these were like hundreds of years old trees, and huge interruption, huge disruption. Took a lot of effort to clear that out, really unexpected. But Jupiter was there, so no one was hurt. My dad even got hit with a few branches, like, and really almost got hurt very badly, but didn't get really super hurt. He had a few scrapes or whatever. And it happened on like several occasions. And granted, he's having a whole set of perfection year things. So, like, that's a whole thing aside. But Jupiter was there acting like a little bit of bubble wrap. And then my mom is asking, can we make a table out of this? Can we, like, because this is beautiful wood. What are we gonna do with it? Well, we burn wood at my house at home in Minnesota if we can, try to reduce the gas price or the gas cost or whatever. So they're always burning wood. Huge amount of, they're gonna have wood for years now. So that was an opportunity. And maybe mom was like, yeah, we could make furniture, So there's opportunities built in. So Uranus, Mars, this trine, all this stuff, like, I'm actually kind of curious to see what kind of cool fruits will come because we do have both of these benefics involved. All right, I'll stop beating that to death. Last thing, on the 31st, we've got Mercury and Neptune in a nice little sextile. And that's really nice for poetry. That's nice for art and spirituality, any works of those varieties, planning, envisioning things in a more exciting, artistic way, brainstorming ideas, all of that. Because again, we got this very, realistic, rational Capricorn stellium that's connecting with something really dreamy in Pisces. And it's a sextile. It's really, they help each other. It's a very nice thing, it looks like, from my point of view. So, 31st into the 1st of February, great time for vision questing, making your vision boards, any kind of planning or thinking about the future in a way that is hopeful. That would be more Neptune. All right, my friends, that's pretty much what I got for you. Let me check in and see if anyone has any questions, any configurations that you wanted to talk about that I did not talk about. This is your last call. If you want to put those in the chat. Thank you. I'm very excited. I'm totally going to use PS, like end of the month, totally using Mercury, Neptune to do poetry and to dance and to do that stuff. It's already on the calendar. I'm like, this is when I'm doing it. Thanks, Lisa. That's so nice. Thanks for the feedback. Oh yeah, Virgo risings. Yeah, so like too, all this stuff I say about Mercury and their journey that they have all the time. If you are a Virgo or a Gemini rising, that's especially important for you because you're literally Mercury. Like, if I could pick one planet to be you, the planet that rules your rising sign, that's who I'm going to pick. So yeah, very important for you. Got a Leo full moon on someone's sun. That should be fun. Leo rising. Yeah, being seen is complicated. It can be very complicated, even if you have Leo planets or, a Leo 10th house. Yeah, if you're a Scorpio rising with a Leo 10th house, sometimes that's a whole thing in and of itself, just that square. Hello, Nikki. Welcome. You're welcome, Tracy. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for all your great contributions. Y'all are keeping me on the straight and narrow. That was really helpful. Thank you so much. Such a good chat. Hopefully that helps. So yeah, I guess again, best way to use this information is really practice with your own chart and think about things that are going on in your life. And then watch the astrology if you can. Even if it's just watching where the moon is, see where they are and look at what the vibes are that day and just kind of see because it was so interesting. I had such a vivid experience of that on retreat. The retreat started on the 12th, and for the first 2 days of it, the moon was in Aquarius, and it was a partially Zen, partially Vipassana retreat. And I'm more of a Vipassana practitioner, which does have a lot of like mental noting and mental labeling and investigation about like, okay, if I'm having a really strong emotion, more likely there's a fear response. So you look into, okay, where's that fear? And then if you're like Thich Nhat Hanh, can I hold the fear like a baby? All of those things. The first 2 days of this retreat, I was fine emotionally. Soon as the moon went into Pisces, the waterworks, all the waterworks. Oh, they came out. Oh, I got into some feelings, some accidental deep feelings, which of course can always happen when you're sitting still. You can run into those. So yeah, I could definitely tell. Moon in Aquarius, not as much crying. Moon in Pisces, definitely more crying. So many feelings. So that was real. So just watch the moon. That's a really great way to use this information. And if you can like I put little notey notes in my own iCalendar. If there's like a nice day, I'll literally write just like nice day, or if it's like kind of a crunchy day, I'll write crunchy day. I didn't really have any days this month. Sometimes I have days where I'm like, mind your own business, mind your own business. I didn't have too many where I felt like we really needed to mind our own business this month, but yeah, just simple notes like that for yourself and a lot of times what ends up happening is it just validates me in how I'm feeling that day, and it can help explain it to me if I'm having a hard time understanding it. And also I like to use it just to, kind of check myself before I wreck myself. If I'm feeling like it's happened a few times now where I am just feeling very spicy, and before I do a thing, I will look at where the moon is to be like, or look at what the sky is to be like, okay, is this, just to kind of see what's going on. And then knowing that if I still want to pursue my current course of action. So kind of in the same way that, like some of my spiritual practices have this kind of labeling or noting thing, astrology we can use as just one other way to notice. And so we can make space to do more free will to do actually more free will, even though this is super fated, right? To choose what we want to do based on more information that we have from the sky. That's how I use it. Hopefully that's helpful. If you've been getting help today, I guess last little thing. Um, oh, you're welcome, everyone. You're so nice. Thank you. Last little thing, if this was helpful, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to keep up with this. My next forecast for February part 1 is on January 28th, and that's going to be at 11 a.m. Central Time. So that one's earlier. That's like, I don't know, I think it's like 5 p.m. Universal Standard Time. So yeah, it'll actually be much more accessible the further east time zones that you are. And that again, that's the 28th. That's a Sunday at 11 a.m. Central Time. Best way to support me, there's so many ways. You can hit the like button. You can give me a super sticker. I need to talk about those more. You can get a reading. You can sign up for my newsletter. I have a little link below for my newsletter. You can sign up for that and then make me feel good when I see the little algorithm that, oh, someone opened my email. What else? Yeah, I have a sliding scale. So if you want to book a reading and it's too much money, that should not be, I don't want that to be a barrier. And that's why I have a sliding scale where you can get readings for cheaper. Just email me. My email is AligningLightAstro@gmail.com. AligningLightAstro. It's abbreviated. Yeah, I do tutoring, I do mentoring about, if you yourself are learning astrology and you need help with these concepts, or you are working on, I'm not like a business coach, but there are people who have astrology practices. There are people who, even just in your own personal life, you're helping people with astrology. If your family members are like asking you about their charts and stuff, and it's like, I don't want to be a professional astrologer, but if you need help mentoring and navigating that territory, how to just best practices. Like I can mentor on that kind of stuff. Before I was doing this, I was a pharmacist and a clinical instructor for my local university. So I would help pharmacy students know how to be a pharmacist in the pharmacy, not necessarily in a classroom. I do kind of a similar thing out here. It's like not necessarily a professor, but I will tell you the ropes that I know. I think that's it. I don't have anything going on. I'm just kind of, I've got tax season to prepare for. So that's what I'll be doing. I hope everyone has an excellent rest of your Capricorn season. I will put the timestamps up eventually. And thank you again for helping me with my technological snafus earlier. I will get this video all prim and proper and figured out later. Everyone have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you in a couple weeks.